Well, thank you, Bruce, for coming to talk to us today. And we'll just start this whole conversation with can you just tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you into education?
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Um, yeah, so I'm one of those people that didn't start in teaching. Um, Teaching wasn't a calling for me. Um, it wasn't even on my horizon. So I did a little bit of time in the military. I spent a little bit of time as a foreign currency broker. I graduated from university in finance and accounting, and really didn't enjoy much of it actually. So my mum told me that I should be a teacher. And so at around about 25, I went to teachers college and did teacher training, hated teachers college with a passion, but really loved being in schools and really loved being in classrooms. And so I kicked off my career around about 1995, 96. And then I've been in it ever since. I've been a principal for 13, going on 14 years now. Two different schools, one at Kaipoi, one here at Rangiora. And I suppose the unique thing for me, which caused a few ripples, was I was never in the senior leadership team. So I was never an assistant principal or a deputy principal. Heck, I wasn't even a head of faculty, really. I shifted into principalship from being in charge of the commerce department.
You must have been very good at it if you didn't go through those usual processes.
No,
Um,
I think it came down to a school was having a few issues and they needed to think outside the box,
yeah,
which is, and I raise that because that's one of the key things that is at the center of certainly my beliefs around making change in education.
yeah, yeah. I've worked in a similar school where we have quite a different process of teaching. What do you think are the biggest challenges for educators today, and how can we overcome those?
Um, we are staid and boring. I think is the biggest challenge. Um, and I say that with a grain of salt, but I also kind of like do believe that we've become a little bit boring. We've lost a little bit of our passion for teaching, passion for our craft. We talk about being student focused a lot, but and most teachers still are. But I just think in education, due to certainly in Canterbury, we're talking post earthquakes, and then we're talking COVID. Some of it's become a bit of a grind. And I think one of the greatest challenges for us, certainly in education, is to how do we reignite that passion for teaching and learning, the passion for our craft, to be proud of what we do and how we go about it. It doesn't help that we're in conflict a lot every 3 years around new contracts and working conditions and those sorts of things. I think our biggest challenge is around our own personal mindsets. And I just think that we've had a little bit of fun sucked out of us, really. Teaching used to be such an amazing, fun job. But we don't hear the laughter as much as we used to. So that's one of the challenges.
Yeah,
Um, in relation to the other side of things is, I think we've become very institutionalized in the way that we think. And so people who move through education, it's a quite a hierarchy. So you start off as a PCT or PRT, I don't know what they're called now, and then there's these levels that you shift up and up, and it appears that people who make the decisions about who shifts up and who don't tend to look for the same sorts of things,
hmm,
i.e., principles, and they tend to look for your ability to problem solve quickly. And that means that there are a lot of band-aids that are placed on things in education, or there are a lot of jumping into something really fast before it's actually been proven that it's positive. There's no balance in that. And
Yeah.
so what tends to happen is we hire problem solvers who fix problems quickly, and we lose the ability to think outside the square and do things differently. And we keep getting the same results because we keep doing the same things, because everybody's really worried about risk.
Yeah.
And, teachers are low risk because it's a low risk job. It's really hard to fire us. And so they think low risk. And so they tend to put a dollar on every horse instead of going, right, we're going to think outside the square and we're going to hit this area and we're going to put all our time and energy into it. So I think that they're the two biggest challenges. If you're talking technology, that's a different thing. And I think technology will always be faced with the fact that they work inside faculties that are really diverse, and it's really hard to get them all on the same page.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's changed.
No, I would agree with you there with my experience as well. You've got so many different areas of technology and quite different, normally quite different, unique personalities of people that are in that sort of technology faculty, and everyone's sort of fighting for their own subject all the time. And I know in some schools, my school is a good example. If you've got some kids that are really, really good, then sometimes other faculties want to come in and take them away. And then you're like, well, we don't, we're going to leave you with the tradie kids and the kids that are just going to, not go on to university because it's just technology. And it's such a shame because so many great kids get taken out and moved around into other places, or sometimes, get advised to don't take textiles, or don't take food, or don't take hard materials. It's not going to get you anywhere. And so they go. And that's a real shame. But I do
I
agree
think,
with you as well with regards to like the leadership, having those different types of leaders that can work together. If you've got all the same leadership style, which is, super exciting, and we're going to move around and be really reactive to what's happening, but you also need the other leaders in there that aren't like that, and so that you have that real balanced team. Otherwise, you've got a lot of people that just want to move and shake and do all the things, and nothing gets the follow through, or it sort of disrupts everything else in the system. If you've got too much like that, it can be quite hard.
yeah, it can be. And there's also a fear to evaluate.
Yeah.
And especially in education, we tend to come up with new ideas or new processes or new things to do. But in a year, 2, 3 years' time, we don't tend to evaluate how effective those were
Yeah.
and whether they are still relevant and still effective. We kind of like to put our blinkers on and just pretend that they're still effective.
Yes.
We
And
certainly found that with our open learning environment here at school. It was a lot of money, and we had 26 classrooms and no walls. And it was out there.
mm,
But nobody in the 10 years, 12 years that it had been up in place, nobody had actually gone back and said, is this actually working? Because it was too dangerous to ask that question.
do you think
Because
it's
what if it
that
wasn't?
that fear of failure, that they don't want there to be something wrong with it? And with all types of education, but really technology specifically, like you have to have those failures in place to see what works and what doesn't work. That's the whole
Yeah,
point.
well, here's a perfect case of this, right? And it's especially with technology. Be very careful if you're going to do these videos that we're doing. Okay, so what I mean by that is we put in a learning barn with no walls, and we had 2 or 3 people who were really important in our school talking on videos about how great this idea was.
Mm,
10 years later, that wasn't a great idea, but they're still in those videos.
yeah.
And so when we come in and say we evaluate it and we see how's it gone, what we're actually doing is also shaming them, because we've said, well, you got on this video and said it was really amazing. 10 years later, it's not.
Yeah.
So are you okay for us to go into that space?
Yeah.
When we do something innovative, we tend to get onto line and we tend to have little short videos of why we're doing this and how amazing it is. That's all good. But what happens if it's not?
Yeah.
And how are those people going to feel when you rip it all down?
Yeah.
And that's still all through the internet and on YouTube, whatever it is.
Yeah. And then that goes into a whole other conversation, doesn't it, of um, the digital world and the way that technology is moving, and AI, which I'm sure you've had plenty of discussions around AI within your staff and in the educating circle, and how to use it. And I mean, I have teenage kids of my own, so the whole concept of that digital world and having a digital content that stays there forever, it doesn't disappear. It can always be found somewhere. So,
Yep.
um,
And I actually think that's one of your challenges as well in the digital space in relation to technology. You, those spaces are starting to lose the trust.
mm,
Trust is disappearing. Not because we don't necessarily trust the person, we're not trusting what we see in front of us
yeah,
as being real or not. And AI, I don't have, we had some issues last year around AI with kids using AI to change photos of our students into photos that weren't appropriate.
mm,
Police were involved. It was a really difficult time. It was almost impossible to find out who did it. And education is a great way of dealing with that situation. But what it did show us was that people don't trust anymore in technology.
yeah,
And I think that's a problem. And
yeah,
the
it
other
is.
aspect is that people don't want to use technology all the time now because they don't trust it. So we're going back to paper.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's going to go full circle. I know with my classes, I had a literacy technology class and I would always get them to read for 15 minutes. And I was like, this might be the only opportunity all day that you're not on a device. And you
That's right.
think, your kids are at school all day and they come home and they want to relax and they be on a device. But little do they know, they've just spent 5 hours of their day on a device, let alone the eye health, you know, of looking at a screen all the time. And yeah, I mean, I used to have kids that were like, oh, really? Do we have to read? And I'm like, yeah, you do. And it's not negotiable. And I would tend to do a lot of work. I guess, yeah, like you said, it's that trust factor as well. Like, okay, well, I don't know if I can trust you to be on a device and be looking at the correct content or getting the right information or even getting it from the right places. So we're going to put it back into a workbook or into a book. And I do know a lot of kids actually quite appreciated that. When you've the world of the Google Classroom or the Microsoft OneNote, everything's online. It's a bit of a novelty to go back to a workbook.
So our senior leadership team, I just bought them all a Remarkable each. I don't know if you've come across a Remarkable, but it's
Oh,
a writing tool that you handwrite on a tablet, and it is non-connected. And so we have banned all cell phones and all computers in our senior leadership team meetings. And
wow.
you can type on it if you get a keyboard.
Yeah.
And all we do is sit and talk and chat and take notes on our non-connected writing tablets. And the amount of work that we do and the connection and the inspiration and the support and the laughter has just gone through the roof.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I would love to do that with our staff for our staff meetings as well. And I think we will, because I just don't you just get tired of seeing people working around you with their laptops open and they're actually on emails
Yeah.
or on Facebook?
Yeah. Well,
Less
and
Facebook, but more emails for us, I
you
suppose.
you do kind of feel as the person that's potentially talking, like if you've been asked to speak in a staff meeting and then you get up and talk and then you're looking around and half the people aren't even taking notice of what you're talking about. You're like, well, I feel pretty undervalued. You don't even value me enough to listen to what I'm saying.
And how does that transfer into a classroom?
Yeah.
So our teachers probably feel really undervalued
Yeah.
regularly.
Yeah.
Even if the kids are working, you can't help but feel that when a laptop is up and somebody is looking at a laptop, and if you don't get them to put it down and have full attention and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're certainly shifting into a non-connected world when we have our meetings.
Yeah.
It has made a massive difference.
I think that's a great concept. Really good. What's my next question?
Yeah,
What role does professional learning and development play in staying current with trends and technologies in education?
very small.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's an obligation for us to do readings. We need to read about technology. We need to know about changing in education, the changing trends. I don't think you need to necessarily go on a conference to do that. Um, yeah, although I love conferences, I
Yeah.
love the networking and I love the dinners and the drinks. But to be honest with you, I've really never come away from very many conferences feeling inspired to change or make change. But I have when I've gone and visited schools and
Yeah.
networked with those schools, or I read the newspaper first at 9 o'clock every morning. I I have a newspaper and I read that and have a cup of coffee and I see what's happening in the world. And then I might go online and see what the innovations are or what's happening in education around the world. I think we have an obligation to do that ourselves. I don't think professional development is about enlightenment. I think it's about you find something that you're interested in and it make you connect with, and then you'll search for some professional development to maybe increase your knowledge, and then you have buy-in already.
Yeah.
I don't think it works when you go to a conference and there's like a smorgasbord of stuff, but
Yeah.
it's only 10 minutes or 40
Yeah.
minutes or 30 minutes. It's just not enough to be deep. I think it's much better if you start chasing, you find
Yeah.
something and then you chase the professional development to increase your knowledge and understanding.
So it's really about being a bit more self-driven as a person, and the conferences are great to network and meet the people. That's what I love about conferences is the opportunity to meet people that you may have heard of before, like in professional spaces, or new people from other parts of New Zealand that are teaching the same thing. Because actually, I kind of used to think that teachers were quite, want to hold on to their information, but actually, I'm finding now that lots of people don't want to hold on to it. They want to give the information, they want to share it, they want other people to be involved. And so that's what I really like about a conference. But I agree with that sort of being driven. A lot of teachers I know that are really, really good, it's because they are driving it themselves. So they are
Mm.
genuinely interested in furthering their professional knowledge to be the best teacher that they can be. And I mean, I see that with people that I know. And it's the same with sort of studying as an adult. I've been doing some study, and it's so different as an adult when you're actually really connected to what you're studying and you want to know. I want to be better and I want to try all these new sort of exciting things that I see. So, oh, that's really interesting. So, do you
This
find
is
that?
circling back to that start where we talked about reigniting the passion for teaching and learning, the
Yeah,
passion for our own learning as much as the learning that we gift. They're connected.
yeah,
That's what you're
definitely.
saying.
And we're constantly role modeling to kids all the time. We're telling them they need to be inquisitive and to try new things. And like you were saying that, education's boring. Well, absolutely. If you're not excited and engaged with what you're doing and genuinely really like what you're talking about, then you're not role modeling to the kids the same behavior that you want them to show back.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a sad state of affairs though when I know some good kids and they're like, school's boring, this is boring. And I'm like, that makes me sad because it shouldn't be boring. It should be super fun. And like people should be curious and invigorated and want to know stuff. And then, you've got these really awesome kids that are genuinely like that. And now they're like, nah, it's just boring. Don't really want to be here. It's like, oh, that's really sad. It's a sad state of
Yeah, it's kind of like, especially in technology, I think you talk a lot about a pathway, a process, a technological process,
yeah.
and in some respects, you know, curiosity should be a little process less.
Mm,
If you really want to be curious, following a set process actually just defines
yeah.
that curiosity.
Yeah.
And um, being curious is actually being open-minded to not just new things, but how to do those new
Yeah.
things and how to
And
get
and being okay to make mistakes when you do try it and not be
yeah,
penalized for it,
100%.
right? Because you're
100%.
not going to go out on a limb and be curious about something if you're going to fail and then that's a failure and it's seen as a failure. Like I used to say to kids all the time, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. That really you're not going to fail. You're not going to get a bad mark because you said you were going to design this thing and then it doesn't work. It's really all the thought behind it and how you can critically think about it afterwards.
I also think that's also an urban myth.
Mm.
Teachers talk about, no, I'm really scared about failing. Why? What happened? What happens when we try and do something and it doesn't work? I don't know any teacher in any situation where they've tried to be innovative and it hasn't worked and they've failed and they've lost their job.
Yeah.
So what is the consequence for teachers if they are innovative and it doesn't work? Potentially kids may lose an opportunity to succeed, right? But somebody should be in behind there managing the risk.
Mm.
But we talk a lot about, it should be okay to fail. Why do we think it's not?
Mm. I think
What
that's
happened to somebody?
I think it's a childhood thing, and I think about primary school when everyone like we're all going to paint this picture of the mountain and the sun and the sea, and everyone's looks the same. They're same. I mean, this hopefully does not happen now anyway, but definitely a while ago. And what about the kid that wanted theirs to look completely different? Maybe they weren't allowed to, and therefore, or
Maybe.
they did, and it was like, well, you didn't follow the instructions and do it the way you were told to do. I don't know.
So I've been a principal I'm in my 14th year, and I have never talked to anybody about their poor marks.
Mm.
And yet every year for 14 years, I've heard, well, we have to be careful because, you don't want to have poor marks. I'm like, why? Why do we think that?
Yeah,
I've
where's
never
that coming
talked to
from?
anybody. This is the failure thing that teachers go, oh, I have to be careful. I don't want to fail and get poor marks. Really?
Yeah,
I get it if you're doing it for the kids, but don't do it because the principal or senior leadership or whatever is looking or head of faculty. I've just never seen that.
yeah. Maybe it's our
Have
own
you?
our own fear of failure that we don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing, and we look like we don't know what we're doing if the kids aren't passing or getting the grades they're supposed to have. I mean, if that's how you choose to judge it, like I personally would be thinking I've done a really good job if I've got kids that have done crazy stuff and experimented, and if it didn't work, then oh well, we'll change it and do it again. Like that's a success to me. Doesn't matter whether
100%.
it's a pass or a fail, but yeah, I don't know. Something's obviously changed in teaching.
There is only one failure in teaching, and that's failure to review.
Yes.
That is the only failure.
And
So
to
you
do
can
something
implement
about
something.
once you've reviewed it, to do something about it.
Correct.
Yeah. Don't just review it and then go, oh well,
That's
that's
exactly
it.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And we
Oh,
do
well,
tend to do that.
I think that's a really good place for us to finish up with that.
Fantastic.
Have you got any more final thoughts you'd like me to
No,
like to say?
that was a nice journey. In fact, a journey that I didn't expect us to go down, actually. I
Yeah.
had some notes and we didn't touch any of them. So it went a different way. That's all right, though.
Well, that I really appreciate the time
No
to
problem.
talk to me, and yeah, that was actually really interesting. This is the good part about my job is I get to talk to interesting people and have great conversations.
Well, thanks for the call, Claire.
So I thank you very much for your time.